So Greg Cosell, someone who I highly, highly, highly respect as a football mind and a film mastermind, he's come out and said on the Ross Tucker podcast that Fernando Mendoza, he's not a playmaker, and he didn't really make all the kinds of throws that you want to see. Does that concern any Las Vegas Raiders fans? Like, it's pretty interesting to see the conversations around Fernando Mendoza. Now, Greg went on and said it's not that he can't make those plays or do make these types of throws, just simply that they did not do it and that he plays in a more old school way. And I think what people fail to appreciate, and I'm not even saying that Greg Cosell is failing to appreciate this, but just in general, this whole idea of if we're not doing something, therefore it's because you're a liability there, or you're a problem, or you can't, etc., etc. Sometimes you just fall into what works. If Mendoza wasn't making these types of throws, wasn't doing some of the things that Greg Cosell personally would like to see, and his team was struggling at the same time, and this was now over multiple seasons with continuity at coaching and roster and whatnot, and you can't explain it away with like the roster where you're just like, well, we can't make these types of throws because we don't have a deep threat or whatever it may be. It's like I can understand.
So, Greg Cosell, someone who I highly, highly, highly respect, as a football mind and a film mastermind. He's come out and said on the Ross Tucker podcast that Fernando Mendoza, he's not a playmaker and he didn't really make all the kinds of throws that you want to see. Does that concern any Las Vegas Raiders fans? Like, it's pretty interesting to see the conversations around Fernando Mendoza. Now, Greg went on and said it's not that he can't make those plays or do make these types of throws, just simply that they did not do it and that he plays in a more old school way. And I think what people fail to appreciate, and I'm not even saying that Greg Cosell is failing to appreciate this, but just in general, this whole idea of if clears throat, we're not doing something, therefore it's because you're a liability there or you're a problem or you can't, etc., etc. Sometimes you just fall. You just fall into what works. If Mendoza wasn't making these types of throws, wasn't doing some of the things that Gay-Cole Purley would like to see, and his team was struggling at the same time, and this was now over multiple seasons with continuity at coaching and roster and whatnot, and you can't explain it away with like the roster where you say, well, we can't make these types of throws because we don't have, a deep threat or, whatever it may be that, it's like I can understand where the logic can kind of get frayed. But the reality is that when you're winning and you're having success and you're in rhythm, you have this momentum, there's zero reason to ever break that. Seriously, there's just zero reason to ever break that because why would you? And the fact that a Mendoza isn't constantly going out of his way to make all these types of throws and to, make all these types of plays in a way that just splashes off the screen, I suppose. I actually appreciate so much because it's showing that he can play within structure, that he can play within the system, and that when things are going good, he's just going to kind of keep following the script. And again, in football, you have a script where you actually have like the actual scripted plays. And in this way, I mean the script in terms of just like the general idea of what you're looking to do as a football team. Not like the scripted plays to like, start the game. So that to me, it's such an important way to play. You know what quarterbacks sometimes struggle to follow the script? The Baker Mayfields, the Kyler Murrays, the Lamar Jacksons, I'd say Sam Darnold earlier on in his career. Trying to think of a handful of others. Tanner McKee. Let's just use a quarterback that obviously is not established whatsoever. But Tanner McKee, when I saw him against the Washington Commanders, like that stood out where I'm just kind of like, you're kind of going outside the system, right? Like you're trying to make harder throws and harder plays than you need to right now. You're a great passer. You're a great executor. Just do that. You're the backup quarterback right now. Like just be smart. He was trying to be a playmaker. He was trying to make all the different types of throws that you want to see. Well, and it failed him. It failed him in that moment. Sometimes it's smart to just stick with the script. And it's just like, we see this in football all the time, right? We hear commentators talk about this all the time when you're watching a game, when they're like, oh man, they're having so much success running. If I was so-and-so, if I was McVay, I'm not throwing another pass until this defense proves that they can stop him. And it's like, yeah, obviously you can't necessarily do that, but it's like the sentiment is right. It's like, yeah, just keep doing what's working. Just follow the script. Just follow the script. And to me, the most recent perfect example of all of this really is the Philadelphia Eagles, when everyone kept saying, well, the Eagles aren't doing this. Eagles aren't doing that. And it was because they don't need to. They're winning. They can keep running the ball. They got great defense, etc. And then when they needed to go outside of that, whether it was against the Commanders in the NFC Championship game or in the Super Bowl or even against the Packers earlier on, like no matter what, they showed that they can do it. Jalen Hurd showed that he can do it, and it's like, there you go. So, I just think sometimes these sound bites, these quotes, they sound good. They sound interesting in theory, and they sound like they're like it's truth, right? Like it is its own version of a diamond in the rough, where you're just like, that's actually, well, when you actually really look at the film, he didn't really make all the kinds of throws that you want to see, and you're just like, oh, am I, it's like, am I seeing something, right? Do I have a board just filled with just like all these equations and formulas where you're just like, look, this is something here. I've been pouring all over the film for weeks. Not everything is what it seems. We're so obsessed with that. And I get it, seeing something that other people don't and being right about it is like, right. It's like the foundation of every disaster movie where you have the scientist and he's like, an asteroid's coming. An asteroid's coming. And they're like, no, you're not. He's like, yes, the data. The data. And they're like, no, it's fine. Stop. And you're like, but it is like seeing something that no one else sees. So these types of sound bites, and again, to be clear, Gay Cole is not doing that for any of this type of like, he's not trying to just get clicks and views and CLS. That's why I respect Greg so much, is that he's literally like, I'm just here to analyze and break down the film. What you want to do with it is up to you. I'm just here to give you what I'm seeing. The way how you want to now interpret that is up to you. And it is, honestly, if we want to look at it from a scientific lens, that's how you do science. You have the researchers, you have the people that run the numbers and the stats, and then you'll have the head people that are there to now, like, to actually break it all down, to be like, okay, well, what does this mean? I see Group A has done better than Group B statistically, and we ran all the analysis. Thank you for that, doctor. Whatever. Now I'm going to interpret that. I'm going to draw the conclusions. It's a little misleading. I see A as greater than B, but we have to factor in X, Y, and C, and someone who just runs a number strictly is not necessarily looking at that. They're not actually looking at the implications of what this actually means. That's not their skill set. It's not what they do. And so, I think, again, Greg takes some of this film and some of these types of things, he just neutralizes it all. And it's just like, this is exactly what I see on the film. I'm not making any type of value judgments, because he always, like, Latin time, Greg's like, do you think so and so is better than this person that? And he's like, I'm not here for that. I'm not making top 10 list. I'm not saying what someone can or can't do. I'm just showing you what the film says. And he's very clear about that, and he's very careful about that. And again, it's why I appreciate it. I think that is an absolute superpower. If I was ever going to be a film breakdown person, like, it would be exactly, I would envision it exactly how Greg does, where it's like, I'm not telling you guys anything that the film doesn't. I'm just here to translate the film, and you can disagree with him, that's fine. But it's just like, I think he comes at it from just a very much like, this is X, that's O. Okay, XO, just saying. And I appreciate it. I really, really do. And then I think you have, and again, I don't think I'm this guy that's, the most equipped out there to be the one who's like, well, let me now break down what he's saying, and I'll tell you where the truth lies. I just think that it's important to sometimes add context to some of these things, to some of these statements, because when you don't have someone who knows how to kind of see through all that, they see something like this and they're just like, yeah, he's not a playmaker. Yeah, he's not making the types of throws that you want to see. Yeah, he's kind of playing football in a more old school way. And, it's 2026. We need a new school quarterback. And it's like, not again, not quite, not so fast. Not quite, not so fast. So, yeah, I didn't realize Fernando Mendoza was going to be somewhat controversial, somewhat kind of like, people are on the fence and you're kind of getting like, I find it, I love when that happens. Honestly, we saw it with Caleb way more than we saw it, say, with like Jaden Daniel, saw it with Bo Nix. Um, I mean, it's just interesting to me when people have strong opinions. Now, I will say this though. I will say this. This has been my experience personally. I can use Bo Nix as probably the more recent example. Bo Nix had a lot of controversy coming in out of college. A lot of people were like, oh, he's really not that good. Look what he did when he was a freshman. And all this type of stuff. And I remember making a ton of videos about it, but he also had insanely passionate fans that were like, Bo Nix is awesome. He's great. I believe all that type of stuff, right? Like it was very much 50-50. You had people that are like, this is hilarious. I can't believe the Denver Broncos just drafted Bo Nix. He's awful. And you had the other 50% that were like, dude, Bo Nix is legit. Bix is legit. Bick is legit. And it was loud. It was loud. I don't see that out of Fernando Mendoza. I see Las Vegas Raiders fans absolutely happy and excited to draft Mendoza, but there is not that army of belief behind Mendoza. And a lot of it also came from the college fan base for Bon Nix. A ton of people are like, I've been watching him, in college since, 20, whatever. Like so many people, you could see it on their profile pictures and their usernames and whatnot. A lot of it was like college energy coming in hot, and it was just like the fans. And I always talk about this, that a lot of these quarterbacks, they have their own individual fan bases. Baker has his own individual fan base. Lamar has his own individual fan base. And it's always really fascinating to see when that fan base is louder than like a team fan base. And I don't see that with Fernando Mendoza. That has not been my experience so far. Maybe that'll change after the draft, post-draft, and once he's fully solidified as a #1 overall pick with the Las Vegas Raiders, etc. But I have not seen that. It doesn't mean that he's not a great quarterback, right? Like I'm just making that observation because I find that stuff interesting. I find it interesting when a quarterback captivates the masses. So there is some of this. Again, controversy is too strong of a word, but there is some of this unsettled conclusions around Mendoza, and yeah, I see more of these types of takes, and I don't see enough of the other takes of people really pushing it back of like, what are you talking about? This guy is going to be awesome. Let's go. They're certainly not as loud as, again, say the Bo Nix fans were Baker, et cetera, et cetera. Heck, even to a tongue. So, I don't know, just something that I find interesting. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Do you think he's not a playmaker? Do you think he didn't really make all the kinds of throws that you want to see? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get to some discussions, let's get to some fights, but ultimately let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.